We gather here on Good Friday to remember a man who had dreams, had those dreams shattered, needed time to think and pray, knew he was likely to die for what he believed, a man of extraordinary religious insight, a man who died a cruel death. On this day, we look at the cross and we remember the betrayal of friendship and its consequences, the casual cruelty of Roman authority and execution, and how unreliable others prove to be in a crisis. On this day, may we also remember that religious bigotry, cruelty, and unreliability are still a part of our everyday lives. On this day, may we learn some new principles for living. Do not avoid contact with suffering or close your eyes before suffering. Do not maintain anger or hatred. Do not say untruthful things for the sake of personal interest or to impress people. Do not live with a vocation that is harmful to humans and nature. On this day, we remember a man. On this day, we remember Jesus.
The Gospel of Luke, chapter 23, records this day to remember. The elders of the people and the chief priests and scribes rose, and they brought Jesus before Pilate. They began their accusation by saying, "We found this man inciting our people to revolt, opposing payment of tribute to Caesar, and claiming to be Christ the King." Pilate put Jesus this question, "Are you King of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "It is you who say it."
I remember a man who had dreams of what might be, that people would be set free from ideas and images about God that enslaved them, that people would believe that through their everyday acts of human kindness, they are intimately connected with the sacred, that people would live in peace in God's presence all the days of their lives. I remember a man driven by his dreams.
Pilate then said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no case with this man." But they persisted. "He is inflaming the people with his teaching all over Judea. It has come all the way from Galilee, where he began, down to here."
I remember a man who had his moments of breakthrough when it must have seemed his dream was being realized. The times people really listened and responded. The men and women who were prepared to walk with him and support him. Times when he spoke better and more convincingly than other times. I remember a man enthused by his successes.
When Pilate heard this, he asked if the man was a Galilean. And finding that he had come under Herod's jurisdiction, he passed him over to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. Herod was delighted to see Jesus. He had heard about him and had been wanting for a long time to set eyes on him. He was hoping to see some kind of miracle worked by Jesus. So Herod questioned Jesus at some length, but without getting any reply.
I remember a man who learned of the cruel death of his cousin John. He got in a boat, seeking a lonely place where he could be with his friends to absorb the shock, to grieve quietly, and to calm the feelings of powerlessness and frustration and fear for his own future. I wonder what he prayed that night. I wonder what helped him to leave that lonely place and go forward to confront life, rather than retreat into isolation and safety. I remember a man driven by his convictions.
Then Herod, together with his guards, treated Jesus with contempt and made fun of him. Herod put a rich cloak on Jesus and sent him back to Pilate. And though Herod and Pilate had been enemies before, they were reconciled that same day. Pilate then summoned the chief priests and the leaders and the people and said, "You brought this man before me as a political agitator. Now I have gone into the matter myself in your presence and found no case against him, in respect of all the charges you bring against him. Nor has Herod either, since he has sent him back to us. As you can see, the man has done nothing that deserves death. So I shall have him flogged, and then let him go." But all together they howled, "Away with him! Give us Barabbas!" Pilate was anxious to set Jesus free and addressed them once again. But they shouted back, "Crucify him! Crucify him!"
I remember a man whose dream was shattered, who broke down and cried over what could have been, who knew the pain of failure and powerlessness, who knew what it was like to feel broken and terribly alone. I remember someone human, like all of us.
When Jesus wept the falling tear, in mercy flowed beyond all bound. When Jesus groaned, a
Pilate then gave a verdict. Their demand was to be granted. Pilate released Barabbas, whom they had asked for, and who had been imprisoned for rioting and murder, and handed Jesus over to them to deal with him as they pleased.
I remember a man who knew he was going to die, who gathered with his friends knowing it was for the very last time, who spoke to them about what he really believed, who wanted them to remember him and to keep his dream alive. I remember a testament to love.
When they reached the place called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there, with 2 criminals also, one on the right, the other on the left.
I remember a man crucified. He was a failure, abandoned by his male friends, taunted, despised, enduring a shameful and agonizing death, no consoling or heartfelt presence of his God to help him. I remember a man whose faith in all he believed was tested to the limits.
Jesus, Prince of Peace, humble and riding on a donkey. Jesus, disturber of the peace. You upset bad religion when it gets in the way of God. Jesus, upsetter of the self-righteous. You turn questions on their head, offering no instant answers, but showing the way. Jesus, lover of the lost. You say forgive when we shout to condemn. Jesus, host at the table. You share your best, even in the face of our worst. Jesus, Savior of the world. Yes, even the world, which wants you until it meets you.
Come ye to the Savior.
I remember a man of extraordinary religious insight, utterly convinced of the connectedness between human loving and living in God, determined to give people personal authority in their relationship with God, wanting to set people free from fear of the unknown, setting his heart on breaking down barriers between people. We give thanks for the ways in which the life, teaching, and death of Jesus has set us free.